Hello, everyone. It is 5:11 Pacific Standard Time, 6 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Central Time, and 8 o'clock on the East Coast. It is time for Train with the Coaches. Now that I finally got everything up and running, I hope this link is working and everyone can get into it. I'm Coach Jeff.
I'm Coach Sherry Ann.
And tonight we are going to talk about what? I forget.
Getting ready for a big race. Do we change anything leading into it? Can we change anything? Should we? About race strategy, nutrition during training, nutrition for race day, you name it. The soapbox can go on and on.
And I think one of the things that surprises me most is how few people really plan for this week or the 2 weeks getting close to the race. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really strange that happens, because I can't tell you. Today we were just in our Ask the Coach thing, and people were asking me, what they should be eating the night before the race or the week going into the race, and I can't believe that they waited this long to do it. I say this all the time, and first thing I always say is shame on you for waiting this long.
Yeah, because if you're waiting until you're 2 weeks out from a race to dial in your nutrition, you're most likely going to hit some serious speed bumps.
Yeah, some serious speed bumps. This is not the time to be worrying about how many carbohydrates you're getting, what your protein intake is. And I often wonder how people get through a whole training cycle without dialing their nutrition in early. And
right.
So this truly isn't the time to be looking to do that. And so let's talk about, when is the time to start talking about the nutrition component?
Early on, during, you're building your base. That's when you have the opportunity to really play with your nutrition and see what your body can handle, because everyone's stomach and digestive system is completely different. Some people can handle more, some can handle less, some are bigger sweaters, so they lose more sodium. It's just, but that's the time to really kind of play with it and see where your body's going to best perform.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people don't realize is, nutrition is a really key part of your whole training cycle. You train how you recover, and you recover how you eat. And I don't think that enough people realize that early on. They say, oh, well, I'm 20, 24 weeks out from my A race, and I have plenty of time to do it. And they don't understand that they're actually not optimizing their training if they're not fueling properly and recovering properly.
It totally comes down to recovery, because if you're not going to fuel your body, you're not going to fuel it properly, you're not going to recover properly, then it's going to impact your training, which is going to impact race day. It's just the domino effect. And it's so funny because, well, it's not funny, but it's, people talk about nutrition being the fourth discipline when you're talking about to triathletes, because you've got your swim, your bike, your run, and then you have to eat. And it's the same way with runners or really any athlete. It's one of those disciplines that I think people don't give enough attention to. They think they'll be just fine. Energy is energy, food is food.
Yeah,
but
and that's not the case, because I often say nutrition isn't the fourth discipline; it should be the first discipline. You should really think about it. And it's interesting. You and I had a conversation about my race plans for the year, and those race plans for the year and my new goals came out of me restructuring my nutrition pattern, because I was feeling pretty bad and I wasn't eating right, and I'm in that time of the year where a lot of things are going on, and I have some stresses that I'm dealing with, and move-in and all this. So obviously I was doing that emotional eating thing that so many people do, because I'm only human. And then, believe it or not, people out there, I am only human. I'm just a little old man who lives here in the shoe and has so many children he doesn't know what to do. But that happens to me, and I feel the weight gain, and then the weight gain affects me, physically when I go out to run or when I go out to ride, and so I have to rechange my whole pattern of thinking and what I'm going to do. And so over the last week, here in our house, we started cleaning up the diet, and I've started to feel better. I've started to sleep more, and I said, okay, well, you know what? Now I'm ready to go. So it was like, for me, it's like the first thing that you should be dialing in, because, you want to be sleeping well, you want to be feeling well, you want to be eating right, even before you start.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like to talk around in my clinics. I say to people, what's the first thing that you do when you build a house? And everybody goes, foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, no, that's not the first thing you do. You make a road to the house. And that road to the house is you know, changing your eating patterns and getting ready to start to build that foundation.
I have not heard that. That's a good one. It's so true, though. It's like if you've got to come and go on that road, too, and that road is your nutrition because it's going to take you to and from where you want to be. So
I'm a pretty smart cookie. You're going to hear a lot of things.
I like that one. I'm stealing that one.
Well, it's funny because people, and it's funny, and it's funny when I do this at every clinic I go to. I say, okay, someone tell me what's the first thing you do when you build a house. And they all go, build a foundation, you know, because I got my little pyramid up there. And I go, no. And then I draw a little squiggly line that almost mimics my mitochondria man. And I say, no, you got to build the road to the house first.
Mm-hmm.
You can't build on what you haven't prepped. So you got to do all that prep before you get to build. And that's the nutritional component that should be dialed in even before you start to train.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because I have my everyday nutrition down pretty good. I mean, I've been an athlete long enough now that is almost second nature to me. But, you know, I'm human just like the next person, and I have 3 kids. So, yeah, like I'll splurge or I'll fall off the wagon, and I've got to pull myself back up on it. But the biggest thing I think for me recently was dialing in my training nutrition because I was doing what I think the masses do. And I wouldn't say I was suffering through, but I felt like performing to my best. I think my body was so busy trying to deal with all of the sugars that I was giving it while I was training and racing that I just thought, okay, this is just part of dealing with the discomfort of racing. And then when I switched, and I'll be candid, like when I started with GenuCan, I was like, oh, I don't know, you know, and I even like stuck my toe in the water, like, okay, let's just see. I still carried my picky bars or my Stinger waffles so that I had that because that was like a crutch for me. And then when I fully went to GenuCan for my long runs and it felt great, didn't have like the nasty taste in my mouth of just the leftover sugars and the nastiness of just my gut kind of going, God, what are you giving me? Because I eat so clean that when I put the gels in and the things that my body doesn't really quite know what to do with, I just wasn't enjoying my training. I was trying to avoid those even during my training, so it was impacting my training because then I wasn't fueling during my training. But now I can tell you I feel so good when I'm training and when I'm done training because of switching to GenuCan. So I was so thankful for that. So that was a huge thing for me to finally. And I didn't even know I had to clear that hurdle. Candidly, I didn't until I tried it. But now I'm so glad I'm on the other side of it.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny. So we can do a GenuCan commercial here because I don't care what people think because I think it's the best product on the market. And, you know, we see the benefits with our athletes across the board. And it doesn't matter who they are. And, you know, someone today was asking that question. Well, I'm trying to cut out my carbs because I'm losing weight, and I'm down to 20 carbs a day. And they're worried about a long run they had this weekend. And I thought, you know what? 20 carbs a day are not enough. You know, you're never going to fuel a long run on 20 carbs a day. And the object isn't to count the carbs, and the object is just to eliminate the bad carbs.
Right.
And when you eliminate those bad carbs, I mean, you eat a very clean diet, and you know, we eat a very clean diet here as well. You know, because you know, Patty is she's celiac and vegetarian, so our diet here is like ridiculously clean. But anyway, we do that. And when you interrupt that healthy process with goos and gels and heavy starchy carbs, you know, those goos and gels and the heavy starchy carbs, it really shuts your system down. Your system goes into this digestive overload where it pumps out all this insulin. You go down and your system gets clogged up. And in your case, you started to notice that, you know, with the crap you were putting on top of your good diet when you trained and raced. You put, you know, and I've talked to Rini about this, and you know, she's a goo freak. And she will act, but she tells you, she goes, I eat the goos, and she goes, I eat so many of them on the bike ride that I generally throw up. And then, but I have so much in my system, I don't eat anything on the run. Now, again, we look at an entirely different kind of athlete.
Yeah.
Most people aren't, at or near their lactate threshold for 7 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of a difference there. And that sugar burning, and don't get me wrong, when you're in the glycogen burning phase, you need glycogen, you need the carbs.
Right.
Your body has to have them to access them. So shorter, faster races, is a fat burning process intrinsic to your performance? No. But it's the longer races as the average age grouper when you're in a fat burning mode for long periods of time that you see the benefit. And when you train, you see that.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to understand, don't cut the carbs, cut the bad carbs.
Right.
And add good carbs. And my advice to I forget who it was. I think it was Nathan Rao today who asked me about a race week and do I do anything different? I said no, I really don't do anything different on a race week. The only thing I might do is add some more fruits and vegetables to my diet. But I don't change anything else because at that point in time my system will be like, what the heck is going on? And it won't digest the bad stuff.
Right. Yeah, race week I never change anything other than I might hydrate more towards the race, like a few days before, with some electrolytes, just to really top off my storage levels and just make sure that everything's in tip-top, just so it's like that's all I do is increase the fluid with electrolytes. But as far as food goes, no.
Yeah.
Your body can only store so many carbs at a time anyway.
Yeah, and preloading electrolytes is a good point because a lot of people, especially if they're heavy sweaters and they have cramping issues, they need to obviously do a sweat test, find out what those issues are, and preload those electrolytes. Get that stuff in your system. Get more sodium, magnesium, potassium into your system going into a race, and it's because you're staying out in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're worried about it at mile 10 of a marathon or 2 hours into your bike ride at an Ironman, too late. I mean, you can't catch up. Once you're depleted, it's pretty tough to catch up. So you really should go in there loaded and ready to go.
Mm-hmm. I'll even take if it's a hot day, I'll even take salt tabs before the race just so that they're already in there and ready to go because you can't really overdose on salt. Worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get puffy fingers. But if you don't have enough sodium in you, then you're not good.
Yeah, nightmare. So. What else are we going to talk about? We're talking about pre-race week. We're talking about going into your race week, things that you should do.
Well, yeah, because I was asking you about, because I'm 4 weeks out from my first 100 miler. I've done a handful of 50s, but 100 is a big difference than, doing 50s. And so we were just talking about my workload and what I needed to be doing and can things be shifted around and changed. And so yeah, it's just getting dialed down and dialed in for those last few weeks leading into, a big race. So it's a little nerve-wracking, but I like that. I like that I have nerves going into it, something I haven't done before, just because I always perform a little better.
Yeah, and it's funny. There are a whole lot of new horizons for you going into this race. One, you haven't been over that 50-mile thing, although you've done an Ironman. So your body will relax. Your body's going to, even though there's a difference between 10 hours and 20 hours, at least through that first 10 hours, you're going to be a lot more comfortable than most people are, their first mile or their first 50-miler, because you've been out there, you've kind of experienced it. One of the things I want you to do is, and I'm sure you already are, is to do some night running. That's going to happen in the Grand Canyon next week because people don't realize the value of that. I'm out there overnight. Go out there and start a run at 2 o'clock in the morning and run through 2 o'clock in the morning and see the sun come up. It's amazing. That sun coming up has a profound energizing effect on people, who are out there. Now, in your case, I don't think you're going to get to that point. I think your 100-miler isn't going to be a 24-hour experience. It's just knowing you. I don't think that's going to. I don't think that's going to happen. So I just made that statement publicly. Now you're really in trouble.
Thanks.
But I think you'll be under that. So you're never going to. You're going to be running at night. You're never going to get that energized of the sun coming up. The 24-hour people get when they do that. So, but it's important to get out there and run at night and have that sense of loneliness. Good thing is you're going to have pacers there. And pacers, kind of help you through that night thing because they've been sitting around and they're all jolly and ready to go. And, so hopefully they're helping you through it. But you're a little bit different kind of athlete going into your first 100, which is a good thing because it's going to be a much better experience, I think, for you than some people. You're well prepared. You know how to train. Things have been going well, knock on wood. There hasn't been an injury. I had a little bad toe thing coming out of the 50-miler, but we got through that. And so I think there's a lot of good things that are going to happen for you. The nutrition obviously is going to be important, but we're not going to change anything from now to then. What you're doing on your long runs is what you're going to do at your race, and what you're doing at your normal week is what you're going to do on your race. In the race week, there aren't going to be any changes. I never have any of my athletes change anything the last week of training. But then I'm very, and as you are, we're both very resilient about saying, let's get this dialed in early. Because I can't remember the last time someone called me up who's someone who I've trained through a full cycle and said to me, what should I do race week nutritionally? I can't remember anyone asking me that question in years. I'll have people who say, what's our race nutrition plan going to be? And we'll outline that, like you and I will go over your 100 nutrition plan. But going into the race, going into that day and night before, I can't remember the last time someone's ever asked me what to do their week. But that's who I am, and that's who you are, and that's what people need to understand. This all needs to start, back the week before week one.
Yeah, I've had people contact me and ask me, okay, I have a race next week, or I just signed up for my first half and it's in 3 weeks, what do I do? Or it's just like, it's interesting that people don't understand that it's a big process. If you want to do well, if you just want to show up and have fun, then it's different. Not much different, but a little different. But if people that want to do well and have goals, it is important to set a plan in motion and have that last few weeks leading up to the race dialed in so you know what to expect. Because I think that plays a big role in being prepared for the race. And when race day comes, you're like, okay, I'm ready for this. I've been talking about it, I've been thinking about it, I've been visualizing about it. Because a big thing for me going into a race, no matter what it is, if it's a road race, trail run, a triathlon, whatever, I always like to visualize what I think the day is going to look like and what I want it to look like. Because it just helps me so that when I do see that moment, then I'm like, okay, I've thought about this. I know what's going to happen here. And then you always have to be flexible because there's always going to be moments of things that you don't think are going to happen, and you have to kind of learn to roll with those punches. And I think that all plays into preparing for a race and talking about it weeks before, everything. So it's I like it. It helps me feel more comfortable going into a race, and that's what I like to do a lot with my athletes because I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and there's so many things I think when people go into a training cycle, in the beginning of their training cycle, and even when they pick a race, and people come to me and say, I want to go do this race because it's flat, and I say, well, where do you live? And they live in rolling hill heaven. I say, no, don't do that. Don't pick a race that's flat. Pick a race that your body's familiar with. Pick something that you want, maybe a little less rolly than where you live. But I think people also don't remember or don't take into consideration, you don't have a downhill, you don't get anything back. I had a triathlete a couple of years ago, went and did Columbia Manor in Maryland, and the bike is 56 miles. I mean, it's like riding across my kitchen table. And this guy was, done a couple of Ironman. He came back and he said, that was the hardest bike ride I've ever done. I said, yeah, because you had to pedal the whole time. And it's the same thing if you run a flat course in a marathon. It's like, oh my God, my legs are, that's because you're turning them over to generate your speed and your pace and your heart rate on your own the whole time. You never get that downhill reprieve. And so I tell people, if you're going to pick a race that you can do some real course specificity stuff on, so that when you get there, you've seen the course in your mind, and is equally important, your body has felt the course, and there's muscle memory there. I don't care if you're running uphill all day long, and you get to a course that's flat, your body doesn't know how to run flat. Yeah, and you have to get ready for that.
I think running a flat marathon is harder than a hilly marathon. I do. I I don't know. I like hills because I like the work. But yeah, I think it's almost more work to run a flat marathon than a hill marathon.
Yeah, I prefer rollers. I like rolling courses. I like a little bit up, a little bit of down, a little bit up, a little bit of down. And I'm a really good climber, but Lord knows I like a break. So, so a little bit up, a little bit down. And we'll talk about Boston since we're talking about marathoners. My Boston people, 6 weeks out now, but we're talking week number 4. I'm emailing them my how to run Boston Marathon video.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ingraining that mental imagery of that course in their mind very, very early on, and having them do a lot of downhill training and a lot of leg strength stuff, so that when they get to Boston, their body says, "Oh, I've been here before."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another big mistake that people make, is they pick courses that they can't practice on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or they need to if they want to do something that's totally different than what they're normal to. I think that is fine, as long as you research the course out and you familiarize yourself with it and do some training to prepare you for it. I just think that's critical to your success. It was like, because when I got ready to race Ironman Mont Tremblant, and the bike was a really hilly bike course, so I made sure I spent a lot of time on the hills here in Arizona, and there's not a lot of hills, so you have to go find them. So it was a lot of doing the same hills over and over again. But yeah, you have to do what the course is going to require of you during your training. It's not like just go train and then show up on any course and do it.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I had a woman in Colorado who I was training for the San Diego Marathon, which is a flat course. And, she lived down in Rolling Hill and Big Hill, Colorado. She used to do all her long runs on the track. She would do all of her long runs on the track just to get her body ready to run those flatter courses. And, she went out there and she ran a great first marathon. But, her body wasn't in shock on the long run day, because she did long track. And now I can't imagine going to do my 20-miler on a track or my 3.5-hour run on a track. But she did, and she would do it every weekend. She'd do those runs on the track, and therefore she had a really good run. And I don't think, quite frankly, I'm not so sure. I used to tease her about it, but I'm not so sure it was the extreme. I think it was smart.
Yeah.
It was smart.
She had the eye on the prize.
Yeah, exactly. She had the eye on the prize and realized that doing it that way was going to be the best way, because there just wasn't anything flat where she lived, as there isn't a whole lot of flat in Colorado to begin with. So it was a good move, and she had a great race and finished well and ran her first marathon in like 3:40. So it was a good day.
Yeah.
What else did we talk about tonight?
Well, I think that race prep, along with, not only just training and not changing things. And, well, actually, let's go back for a minute, because you said, it's important to not change things going into a race, with the caveat that you don't get injured and nothing comes up. Because I think that it's important for people to stick to a training plan, because there's a purpose and a reason behind the training plan. There's just a bigger picture that I think athletes don't see. I think they see today's workout or this week's workout when that little thing fits into a bigger picture of preparing for a race. But at the same time, we have lives, people have jobs, people have families, and things happen, people get sick, injuries might happen, whatever, and it's important to be flexible, so that if you have a training plan that you want to stick to, but something presents itself that you need to make adjustments, that those can happen, and you'll still be successful with your race. But it's understanding that, at least with, I know that you do this with your athletes, and I do it with mine, that life's going to happen. So this is the plan that is going to get you best prepared. But if something happens with life, then we can make adjustments and still have you well prepared for your race. So it's not like you have to have it set in stone, and if you don't stick to that plan, then you're going to blow up and fail. Because I've seen some athletes that freak out if they don't for some reason can't stick to their plan. You know, if a wrench gets thrown in there, that they start to freak out and fall apart. Like, oh my gosh, I'm totally going to be a failure on race day. And it's like, no, 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 that's not the case. So it's important for people to understand that they can be flexible and still be successful.
Yeah, I agree, but I also think we have a responsibility to that athlete that sometimes who gets hurt or something happens or there's a dramatic life event that gets them out of their training cycle, is to sit them down and say, look, okay, this is not going to be your A race. We're going to get you there in the best condition we possibly can, so you can go race the race or run the race or do the triathlon, do whatever it is that you're going to do and get through it and get healthy. We'll step out of that, we'll readjust, and we'll pick a new A race.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for me, the worst thing I think that I can do, and I know you feel this way too, is to go into is to send an athlete into a race with false hope or false expectations.
Yeah.
And then and then deal with their frustration, because I've seen I've seen athletes who have had bad races who have never raced again.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the shock and the disappointment, because I think they went in there with bigger expectations than they should have had. And I will say to someone, look, I don't think this is realistic, and we need to look at this the right way. We've lost 4 or 5 weeks due to some kind of injury or something happened in your life, and we need to go in this and say, okay, you can still do the race.
Mm-hmm.
But like right now, I have a kid who's racing this weekend over in Korea, and he hurt his leg. Maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, but he's hell bent on doing this marathon. So we've been on the bike for the last 5 or 6 weeks, and he's going to run his race. His leg's feeling good now. He doesn't have any more pain. He's going to run his race, but his mentality is, it went from, okay, I'm going to go crush this race to, all my buddies are running it. We signed up for this. It's my first marathon. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to come out of there. We're going to have a good summer triathlon season, and I'll do a fall marathon. But we talked about that, and we kept it realistic when the injury came, because it wasn't going away. It wasn't going away, and everything he tried, it just stayed. And finally, after like 5 or 6 weeks on the bike, now he ran the last couple of days. He's doing some shakeouts, and his leg feels okay. That didn't mean go out and run your 3:10 marathon that we thought we could do. Just go out and get through this marathon, and that's the approach. But and we have a responsibility to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Some years back. Not some years back, but maybe 5 years ago, I had a guy who tried, 3 previous attempts to qualify for Boston, and he called me up and he said, I really need to try something different. And so we went to heart rate-based training. He had never done that. And his next race, he qualified for Boston, and then that was the year they changed the registration policies. And when they changed the registration policy, he had to run 3:30, and he ran something like 3:29 something, and he had qualified, but on registration day he didn't get a registration because so many people in his age group or whatever, and at that time of got in before him. He hasn't run since. He hasn't run since. He was so disappointed by that, and I hate to see anyone. In his case, he didn't come out of a race disappointed. I mean, he had a disappointing life event. And I really hate to see that happen.
Yeah.
Contrarily, people go have monumental race moments, do their first Ironman, do their first marathon, and they go into depression as well.
Yeah.
And they don't want. They have this great this great life moment.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it's like, what do I do next?
Yeah. It's really anticlimactic after your first race, because it's like, oh my gosh, that was so awesome. It was such an amazing feat to cross the finish line. And there's so many people that have Ironman blues afterwards. It's like, because they were getting up every day and doing the work to prepare for that day. And once that day came and went, they were like, okay, what do I do now? And the blues set in because they don't have a purpose and a reason.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And it happens more with Ironman than it does with marathons.
Yeah.
Because the marathon will come out of marathon and say, okay, well, my next goal is to knock 10 minutes off this one. And my next goal, and eventually then the goal, turns into I want to qualify for Boston or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But with an Ironman, first of all, the chances of becoming a Kona qualifier are so remote and so hard for most people. I mean, to even say, okay, well, I've done one Ironman, I've done two, and I'm getting faster. Well, I'm going to go. I mean, to come in first or second in your age group, and to get a slot is so hard to do. And so very few people even go into an Ironman race thinking I'm going there for a Kona slot.
Right.
Except for wackos like you who go to their first Ironman and say I'm going to get a Kona slot and then do. But most people don't have that mentality. And then they do the Ironman. And they have this great experience, and what happens, I think, with those people, they come out and it's like, okay, I've done this. I'm an Ironman. I get my tattoo. This is all great. Man, I don't ever want to do that 20 weeks of training again. That's a hard thing about getting someone motivated for that. I'm always in awe, and we have a friend, a mutual friend, Scott. He's done 6 Ironman. You've done 5, but he's done 6 Ironman, never with the intention of qualifying for Kona, just trying to get a little better every time out. I applaud that, to want to go back into that 20 weeks just to get a little bit better. You were an exception to the rule. I think you've been on the podium in every one of your Ironman except Mont Tremblant, where what were you, 6th?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're an exception. You're an exception to that rule. But I think that's what happens to a lot of Ironmen. They come out of the race and they think, that was great, because I remember when I did my Ironman, I came out of the race and was like, I never felt better in my life. I mean, I felt better after my Ironman running in on torn ligaments than I ever did running a marathon.
Yeah.
But the whole thought process to me was just like anyone else was like, oh man, I didn't train 20 weeks. But I mean, the whole thing was like, the 20 weeks of doing that. I think that's what is so daunting to the average triathlete who takes on that Ironman event. So, okay, I'm just going to do 70.3s from now on, or brands.
I think it's just the mental attitude that I think people do or don't have going into the race. Like, you say 20 weeks, and I was thinking, like, I know there's an off season and an on season, but I never really fell into that. And maybe that's because Ironman Arizona it's like mid-November, and so I think it's kind of late in the year. But once that was over, all I really took off was the last 2 weeks of November and December, and I didn't really even take it off. I just went into transition training where I was still doing swim, bike, run, just less of it, like lower volume amounts. And then I was right back into training because I always had something else that I was going for, but that's a lot of my mentality. But I think that it's such a huge feat for people to do an Ironman, all the training that goes into it. And most people I think, look at it like a bucket lister, where they want to just do an Ironman just to do it. And so they finish, and then they're like, wow, that was awesome. So what now? And some do sign up for another one, but it's so interesting now with Ironmans that if you don't sign up quickly, a year in advance, then you're kind of SOL. And it kind of sucks because there's so many people that kind of go, could I do that next year? It's a lot to think about a race 12 months out.
It really is. And you almost have to go, now you almost have to go volunteer to get an entry.
Yeah. Well, definitely here in Arizona, you have to.
Yeah. Like most of them now, if you're not there to volunteer, because they open it up to volunteers, they open it up to race finishers. By the time that's done, there's 10 slots left for 98% of the races. So if you're not there to volunteer, and people have to travel to Arizona to volunteer for the race so that they can get an entry the next year. And I think Ironman's getting to the point where Ironman courses are saturated.
Yeah.
Where can you have more events? Where can you keep adding events? And you can't. And so you're right. So you have that whole year where you went to a race and you saw these people suffer. Like Boulder. I pity the people who went to Boulder to volunteer and saw what was going on that day. I bet you half of them said, no way. And they didn't sign up for Boulder. But you watch these people go and you wait, that's going to be me next year. But if you're smart as a volunteer, you pull your little volunteer shtick, and then you get to the finish line because you get all remotivated as Riley's yelling everyone's name, when you come through. But you're right. It's a whole year of sitting around. Now, I see a lot of people in a couple of pages we're involved with who I think are training too much, too soon.
Mhm.
So I think I think the off season, if you're waiting on that year, finish out your year. Take a little bit of that downtime in the winter, the family time, the holidays, enjoy that, lose a little bit of fitness, and then gradually build into your training cycle. Again, making the road to the foundation.
Mhm.
And do that gradually. Don't put a lot of stresses on yourself. Just get a nice, solid aerobic base and work on technique. Work on your swim technique, work on your run technique, work on your bike techniques. Do that without doing any hard stuff, just to get that foundation laid. So when that peak training cycle starts, you're physically okay, you're mentally okay, and again, even take a week or two off before you start that cycle.
Mhm.
You're about to experience a coach who's going to tell you when you get done with your 100-miler, okay, we're not doing anything for a couple of weeks. We're going to shut it down. You're going to lose a little bit of fitness, and then we're going to get ready for your half Ironman.
Mhm.
Because you don't take downtime, and guess what? That's going to happen, and you're going to hate me, and you're going to be screaming, and you're going to be yelling, but I don't care. You need that downtime to lose a little bit of fitness so your body can completely recover, rejuvenate, and we can get ready to go, crush that 70.3 in Arizona.
Yeah, that's funny that you bring that up because it just made me think about the Ironman blues, because I've never had them after doing 5 Ironmans. Well, I did 4, and then this last Arizona, I did have a bit of the blues after that one because I didn't sign up for Arizona the following year, and I had decided because I was hoping to qualify for Kona, and had missed it by 1 slot again, and I was just like, Arr! And I was just, I had given everything I had that day on that course, and it just wasn't my day, because long course racing, you have to be ready for anything, and I still had a great race. I'm not balking at that because I did, but it wasn't my day in the sense of getting a Kona slot, and so I was just kind of like, blah, Ironman. And I was like, I don't want to do another Ironman next year. And that's how I fell into this whole Patagonia, wanting to do adventure racing. And I'm so stoked about that, but after some time off of just not thinking about triathlons and focusing on ultra runs, because I have this 100-miler coming up, then I was kind of like jonesing at the thought of getting back into doing an Ironman, or at least a half Ironman, not a full one. So I'm excited. When I signed up for Arizona 70.3, I was thinking, okay, this is going to be fun. But yeah, downtime is going to be odd.
Well, because I think that's important, and I tell people that people who we work with all the time, and I tell people who talk to me about it all the time. Enough runners and enough triathletes don't take time off. They just go from race to race, season to season, and they all think that, well, if I take 2 or 3 weeks off, I'm going to get fat, I'm going to get out of shape, I'm going to lose all my fitness. Quite the contrary. Yeah, you might gain a couple of pounds, that's okay. But your body's repairing, it's rebuilding. You're giving it that full cycle of 3-4 weeks to let your body completely rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can get back into a training cycle again, completely healthy, stronger, and ready to go. And not enough people do that. I'm amazed when, and I hear people all the time, well, this is my 5th marathon this year, and this is my 5th 70.3. The girl at a clinic last week who has an A race at, she's doing Louisville as her A race, and she's got like 4 70.3s and 3 Olympics lined up going into that. I said, when are you going to train? And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, let me see. On Olympic distance, for you don't have to shut down too much. And I said, so you can do. You're going to lose a week of training going into the race. You're going to come out of there recovered because you're not going to be too fresh coming out. So you're going to lose that second week. 70.3, you're going to lose the week before the race, the race week, and depending on who you are, another week coming out of the race.
Mm-hmm.
People don't understand that how over racing takes away from training. You don't train effectively, and I'm sorry, but people always say, this is my feed race. Look, folks, you're age groupers. You're age groupers. You're not professional athletes who go to a race and say, well, I'm only going to do this in such and such a time because it's a training event. You get there and you start your run, and Johnny Bob from down the street, he's never run anything in his life, and that first mile he shoots out of there, runs past you, and guess what happens? Every competitive juice in your body goes off, and you chase them.
Mm-hmm.
So over racing kills your A race, and people just don't get that. You don't need to race You don't get faster racing. You get faster training.
Mm-hmm.
Races are good, but they have to be a well-established pattern going into your A race. If you want to have a great A race, then you need to establish a pattern of races going into it that are going to be beneficial, that are going to give you downtime when you need it, race time when you need it, because racing helps us mentally as well as physically.
Right.
And, to strategize and racing and going through the whole process when you're out there, of course. But you can't over race, and so many people do that. Coach, I'm running 5 marathons this year, and I say, what? Some Kenyans don't run 5 marathons in their entire racing career. And if they do 2 in a year, it's a lot. And I say, why would you want to tax your body harder than these guys who do it for a living, who don't do anything but run and recover?
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing of that too is that people don't, not only physically but mentally, you have this mental bank, and when you're racing, you kind of go to a dark place. If you're racing hard, like if you have a goal that you're wanting to reach, and that governor on your head and on your body knows when you're hitting it and when you're going past it, and I think that your mental bank, there's sometimes just like, I've gone there too many times, so I'm not going there today.
I agree wholeheartedly, because I don't care what the distance is. If you're at that point, the marathon, when that point comes at 20 or 22 miles where you hurt and everyone hurts, you have to say to yourself, okay, this is part of the game, I'm going, because that's what makes me a marathon. When you've been there too many times, you can't say that. You say, you know what, I'm tired of hurting.
Yeah, your brain's just going to go, no, not doing it today.
Same thing for triathlon. And here's a great story. And talking to Dave Scott, he was talking about when Chrissy quit. She had been sick that year and injured, and they were standing on the course watching the race, and they were on the run course, and the girls were going by on the run course, and they'd watch maybe 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 girls go by, and the pros go by, and she looked up at Dave and she said, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to go through this again. And there's a time when, and if you're over racing, that happens while you're racing. It doesn't happen at the end of a brilliant career like she had. It just, you're going to say to yourself, I have one guy who I'm always yelling at. This guy signs up, and he's not really a teammate. He just became really a teammate now. But he's running like 5Ks every other week. I said, you got to stop doing that. You got to stop doing that, because even sooner or later at the 5K distance, you're going to line up one day and you say, oh, man, I got to push myself for 25 minutes again as hard as I can. No, you don't want to do it, and you're right, because mentally you've shut down.
Yep. Yeah, the brain will only go to that dark hole so many times.
Yeah, and let's face it, no matter what race you do, if you're racing it, you're there.
Oh, yeah.
You get.
I like that dark hole, though.
Yeah, and it's that's part of being an endurance athlete. And so, there's got to be periods of rest in between, and recovery, and smart, and doing something fun. There's so many different things that you can do rather than, just go out there and race.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of been your history. But we're gonna change that after the 100-miler. We're gonna have a great 100-miler. We're gonna shut it down for a little bit. We're gonna learn how to kayak. We're gonna learn how to do some sea kayaking, some river kayaking. We're gonna climb a little bit. All the things that are a little bit more fun. You can get a little bit of workout, but you're not using those Iron Man muscles and Iron Man mentality. To get you out of that, let your body rebuild and replenish it, and then we're gonna go down and get a world spot at Arizona. We're gonna get out, because you're for anyone who's watching these podcasts, Sherry Ann really isn't 15. She's going to be 40 in August. So when you look at her and go, geez, I didn't realize they had a 15 to 20 age group. They don't. She's actually 39 years old. And we're going to let because she's going to start that master's age group, and it's hard to believe. But she goes into the master's age group, which is still pretty competitive.
Oh, yeah.
For everyone at the triathlon distance, that 40 to 44-year-old age group is competitive. But we're going to go out and and Sherry Ann's going to do her best half Ironman ever this year, because we're going to take a little bit of downtime, get her rested, and then we're really going to go after it. And I'm excited about that. And that's after you crush this 100.
So I'm glad you're excited about that. I'm excited about what's happening next week.
Yes.
So before we wrap this call, let me share that our Patagonia team is finally converging next week in the Grand Canyon, and we're going to be doing some running and doing rim to rim to rim and bonding. And the really cool thing is our documentary crew is going to be there to kick off documenting our year of getting ready for Patagonia. So I'm excited about that. Like I
think it's really cool.
Wednesday.
I was just taking care of the rooms today, and I was looking at the list, and it's really, really cool because we have, not just you five there, the 4 primaries and our alternate, Kevin, but we have like 8 teammates there as well who are coming in. So they're going to get to experience this whole thing. Obviously they're there to run the Grand Canyon, but they're going to get to be part of the whole movie scene, and you guys doing the documentary. I'm so excited. I know Brian Hay really, really well, one of the teammates, and who's a really, really super guy. But I'm really excited about meeting Aaron and Lee and Kevin, and hanging out with you is always is going to be a fun thing to do. And plus, we have other teammates out there. But the documentary is going to be neat. I'm pretty excited about that. That's going to be the start of they're going to do. For those of you who don't know, the U.S. Patagonia team, USA Patagonia team. I'm fortunate enough to be the coach, and Sherry Ann is the captain. And we have a crew out of Pipeline Digital Media out of LA who is going to do a full-length documentary on the whole training process up to the race. They're going to be at the race in Patagonia. They're going to be out on the race course, filming our team, doing the documentary, do the whole thing, and then it's going to be released to the public probably late summer, early fall of 2016 after the race. So that's pretty exciting stuff, yeah.
Very exciting. So, yeah, I can't wait for that. Like, next Wednesday can't get here fast enough.
Yeah, we're excited. We're finally getting the airline reservation taken care of today. So, yeah, so anyway, that's exciting stuff, and that's good news. Do you have anything else you want to add before we go?
Oh, no, this is a great chat.
Yeah, it was a great chat. I hope always if anyone has any questions, they can email Sherry Ann. Now they don't email me. You can email Sherry Ann now. Coach at prsfit.com. Our website is prsfit.com. And you, of course, can email me. It's prsfit@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, whatever you like to do. And as always, be healthy.
Train smart.
Have fun. This is Jeff.
This is Coach Sherry Ann.
All right. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
You there? New product.
Oh, it still says it's live.